We're going to talk to the Retrievers. Their representative is Devon Thomas Treadwell, and she's going to talk about their new approaches to finding lost dogs. This is a segment not to be missed.
Cause baby, now we got bad blood. You know we used to be bad love. So take a look what you've done. Cause baby, now we got
You're listening to the Vet Buzz. We're your host. I'm Petrendologist Charlotte Reed.
And I'm veterinarian Dr. Michael Fleck.
We're happy to be with you each week, giving you the best in pet talk news. You know, it's every parent's nightmare. Imagine this. Your dog's gone missing and you don't know where he or she is. But you know time is of the essence and that you most likely can't do it alone to find him. Well, there's a group that helps pet parents in Minnesota. It's called the Retrievers, and they're truly setting a new standard for finding lost dogs. Joining us today to talk about how the Retrievers find lost dogs is Devon Thomas Treadwell. Devon, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you. I'm very glad to be here.
So, Devon, tell us about the Retrievers. Whose idea was it to found the organization? What's it all about?
Well, we started originally, the four founders were all volunteers with Retrieve Golden of Minnesota, which is the upper Midwest's largest golden retriever rescue group. And every now and then, a dog would go missing, and I helped to form a kind of a rapid response team. And we also developed some innovations like new traps and that sort of thing. And after a while, the handling and transporting protocols improved, and the group started losing fewer dogs. And in the meantime, our reputation grew, and we began to be asked to help with dogs from other organizations and privately owned dogs. And so we realized that this was a mission all by itself, and we spun off and became the Retrievers in 2014.
Wow. So how was the organization set up? And then, most importantly, how are you funded?
Well, we set up using a lot of the processes and protocols that we had developed when we were with the rescue. And because we did have such visibility from the very start, we had a pretty good donor base right off the bat. And we are 100% funded via donations. We're a 501c3 nonprofit. And so we just raise money. And we've been very fortunate to have a very strong support group here in Minnesota and surrounding states.
Oh, that's great. So what specific services do you then provide?
Mostly it's consultation. We can help with strategy, helping owners and rescues know what to do next at each step of their search. When we have volunteers that are, within a few minutes from where the dog went missing, we can also help with bringing over intersection signs, which is one of the most important things that can be done with a lost dog search.
I'm sorry, what's an intersection sign?
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
What's an intersection sign?
Basically, it's a 22 by 26 inch piece of neon cardboard, actually two of them, so it's a two-sided sign. And it's kept very, very simple. You can just write on it, lost dog in very big letters, a short description, two-word description of what it looks like, and then your phone number in really big letters. And so you want to keep the sign to, very big so it can be read from a passing car. And, no more than 5 or 6 or 7 words on it so that, it's like a billboard. Needs to be read in a hurry. And when it's big and bright like that, awareness spreads very, very quickly. We found that this is the most important and most effective tactic that can be done right away.
Is that sign placed in the yard of the owner of the lost pet, or?
Well, that would be a good place to start. It's preferable to place them on private property, but at corners where you have a lot of traffic. If there's a certain intersection where somebody always has to pass to get to a subdivision, for example, that'd be a good spot.
Yeah, that makes sense. And people see the sign. Yeah. And that's really why we wanted to have you on, because even though most of your work is done in Minnesota in terms of having your team on the ground in the states even close by, it's really important for people all over to know what you guys are doing and how you are setting this new standard. Now, like we talked about, your organization is volunteers. So how has the organization grown bigger, and how do you train these volunteers to do this type of, I like to call it, search and rescue work?
Interestingly enough, many of our volunteers, and we're about 30 people now, have joined us after being involved in a previous search, sometimes for their own dog. But we get a lot of our team members because they get, they have a passion for lost dogs. They see what the work is like on the ground, and then they join the team. And in terms of training, it's a lot of on-the-job training, as it were. We do have a mentorship for team members coming in new, so that there's always guidance when they're clients with their dogs.
So how many cases a year do you really have? You take on?
It varies. Last year we did 317.
Wow, 317?
Close to one a day.
Yeah,
close to one a day.
Yeah, exactly. I was just about to say 365.
Yeah, and you have to realize that, these cases can really vary from difficult cases taking weeks to find the dog to, they contact us, we have one conversation, and suddenly the dog is found. So there's a real variety of how these cases resolve.
And then what's your success rate?
We have about a 70% success rate in bringing the dogs home, whether it's alive or finding them deceased.
But that's great, though. I mean, that's really, truly great. So what's your typical profile case? I mean, who's that dog that you're looking for?
The toughest dogs are skittish by nature, and many of these come from puppy mills, or they come from hoarding situations, or other situations in which they did not receive proper socialization as a puppy, and so they are naturally xenophobic. These dogs will run at the sight of people, which is why they can't be caught normally caught by hand when they go missing. We get a lot of those kind of cases. Friendly dogs don't stay lost very long. They might wander into a yard and then, the neighbor drags them home. But the xenophobic dogs are really the toughest cases and the ones where you really need to work hard to get them back.
So what's your strategy and protocol for finding the lost dogs?
Normally, it's all about awareness. You have two eyes. You have one person looking for a dog, often driving around, hoping to find their dog. You can do that for an hour and then go home and make some signs and start getting awareness out so the entire community is looking for your dog. Then you have a real chance of getting sightings as opposed to randomly coming across it. So once you start getting sightings, then we encourage people to create a Google map and marking those sightings. And then you can start to see a pattern. Sometimes dogs will run 3-4 miles before they settle. Sometimes they run further than that. But what we want to see is when the dog, especially these anxious dogs that I was talking about, when they find the resources that they need, food, water, shelter, security, then they stop running and they start hanging around. And that's what we're looking for. So when you start marking those sightings, you're going to kind of see where their safe spot is. Once you see where that safe spot is, you can try to go there, just the owner, and possibly the owner with a resident dog that the other dog might be bonded to, and sit there quietly and see if the dog will come to you. And if that doesn't work, then we can help them with humane trapping. And we will put out a trail camera and monitor the trap so that we can observe the dog's behavior around it. We can see and we always unlock the trap first of all, because we want to see if the dog is even going in rather than running out in the middle of the night to let out a raccoon. Mm-hmm. So once we see that the dog is going in a trap, then we arm the trap. We usually do a stakeout nearby. Sometimes we're there all night and wait for the dog to enter it. And then when we're close by, of course, we can respond right away and secure it.
Now, you've mentioned traps twice. Now, It's my understanding that you've even created some of your own traps.
Yes. And this began when we were working with the rescue. There was a golden retriever named Missy that was lost way up in the Boundary Water area. She was in the wilderness where there were wolves and bears and coyotes. And the owner found her safe spot, found where she was coming back to, got a trail camera on, and put out a conventional live trap, which is about the size of a medium dog crate. And we saw photos of the trail camera of the dog standing on the trap, going in halfway, not getting caught, There's one shot where she's looking in the camera and laughing at us. So one of the other founders of the team said, we need a bigger, better live trap. And he almost overnight developed what we now call the Missy Trap, which is a large enclosure. It's probably 8 by 10 feet in diameter. And the original version of the trap utilized a bait method where the dog would pull down on a hanging piece of bait, and that would trigger the gate. We have since developed a much better method for triggering the gate that uses garage door sensors. Mm-hmm. And so the dog only has to pass through this beam to break the connection and drop the gate. So that's one of the innovations we've done. And we have various sizes of traps now. We have smaller traps for smaller dogs and easier transporting them from location to location. But basically, we've settled pretty much on this electronic sensor, which we call the Ray Tripper. And all of these designs, by the way, are freely shared. People can see our designs and copy them and use them to catch their own dog.
You mentioned trapping and you mentioned cameras and electronic censoring. What other kinds of high tech do you use for trying to retrieve these dogs?
Well, we did last year purchase a thermal imaging device that allows us to, see an animal at night. This is useful for when a dog is maybe incapacitated and we need to locate it from a distance, especially. But that's probably it. The Ray Tripper, the trail cameras, the FLIR device. That's mostly what we use for tech at this time.
Sounds like a good start to me.
It does. And, some of the cameras they use will photograph the dog in the dark. But Correct. How do you get them to, is it battery operated? Is that how it works with these cameras?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
That's what I wanted to know. So my last question is, what advice do you have for owners of lost dogs?
Well, I would say don't get into a feeling of denial that, your dog will come back on its own. Especially if this dog is skittish, if it's shy, if it has done something uncharacteristic like wandered off and it always comes back but it didn't, you need to act right away. And again, it's all about the awareness and the plotting of the sightings and just getting the word out there. And of course, all the other things like calling the shelter, calling the police. We have an entire action plan on our website that people can follow to help make sure they're covering off all of these steps. So I would say, don't take it for granted that your dog is going to come back. Act right away. Don't let any time pass. And when you're working with experienced group, make sure you follow their advice and their recommendations also.
Great.
And one of the things that's toughest, if I have just one more minute, is that when dogs are lost, they get into a mental state that we call survival mode. And this is a very anxious state. And often they won't come even to their own owners. And we have sometimes a hard time getting owners to understand this, that, even if you rush out to a sighting and rush up to your dog, that dog will run away. So understanding survival mode is a very important thing to do, and to approach the search strategically.
Great advice.
Great advice.
And they're so wonderful of an organization because they actually put the information out there on their website.
Well,
yes.
Well, Devon, thank you so much for being with us here today. But really, before you depart, can you give us that website?
Yes. We are at theretrievers.org.
Great. Well, everyone, that was Devon Thomas Treadwell from the Retrievers discussing how to find lost dogs, especially the newest techniques and strategies that they're implementing that are really changing lost dog searches for the best.
And certainly to relieve everybody's anxiety when they lose a pet.
Stay tuned. We're going to take a commercial break and be right back.
It's been a long day without you, my friend. And I'll tell you all about it when I see you again.